I try not to judge thoughts as positive or negative. I try and judge them now as they're just thoughts. So I try and change the way I relate to them or the impact they have on me rather than judging them as positive or negative.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, who loves watching Death in Paradise, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 108 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. And if this is your first episode of listening, welcome. If this is your 108th episode, welcome back. Thank you so much for being loyal. You are wonderful. Last week, we had Amy Bender on the show, who was a sleep performance expert. And I hope that soothed a lot of worry you may have had about trouble falling asleep. I know when I had insomnia, I tried everything, and the harder you try, the more you stress, the more it just doesn't seem to happen. And I know when Christy Ashwandon came on the show, she talked about how important sleep was. And going back to my days of having insomnia, I know that that would have probably caused me a lot more stress, knowing that it was that important. So hopefully that episode with Amy was helpful with some of the things she mentioned I'd never even heard of before. So if you've missed it, be sure to go back and listen to that one. Now, today I have a special treat for you. I have part one of my episode with my sports psychologist, Evie, answering your questions. Now, remember I talked about the Running for Real Superstars community a few weeks ago. We had some of the members come on to talk about their own running journeys. I got to hear from you, just your lives and what you've been up to. Well, I asked what sports psychology, what mental training questions that you had within the Superstars community. And in this episode, Evie and I discuss your questions and answer them. Obviously, I don't have a psychology degree, but I can weigh in with my experience and my thoughts on the topic. And then it didn't feel so awkward for Evie, just, me asking her questions and feeling like she was just kind of, being put on the spot. So we thought it'd be nicer to have a bit of a discussion. And as I mentioned, it's part one. We are going to have a second episode in about a month or so. So you will get to hear more of your questions if yours was not answered today. Now, before we dive in, I just want to give you a quick reminder that we have a Boston Meetup on April 14th at 12 p.m. So you can email me, tina@tinamuir.com, and I'll give you the details for that. All right, we are just going to go thank our sponsors, Aftershocks and Knesio, and we'll be right to the interview. This podcast is brought to you by NewKneeShop.com. Don't let knee pain help you from completing your long runs or worse, sidelining you altogether. New Knee is designed specifically to relieve that dreaded runner's knee pain. Unlike a typical knee sleeve, New Knee relieves the pressure at the source of the pain. And the research reveals if you get the pressure away, you get the pain away. Runners from coast to coast are getting instant relief with New Knee, and New Knee can help you get back to running without knee pain. Use code TinaMuir at newkneeshop.com. That's NUNEESHOP.com for a 20% discount. This episode is sponsored by Aftershocks, the award-winning headphone brand, best known for its open-ear listening experience, powered by patented best-in-class bone conduction technology. Aftershocks headphones sit outside your ear so you can hear your music and your surroundings. I know. Aftershocks is a must-have for runners, providing the ultimate level of safety and comfort without compromising sound quality. To learn more and save $50 on Aftershocks endurance bundles, visit tina.aftershocks.com. That's tina.aftershocks.com. Evie, my dear friend, welcome back to the Running for Real podcast. I'm excited about this episode to kind of really, we're doing it in a very different way, so this is going to be fun, but welcome back. Thanks for being here.
Oh, look, I'm so excited. It feels like ages since we've caught up. I know we catch up outside of your podcast, but I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really pleased that you had this idea of me coming on and actually asking your community questions because they are our audience. So I'm really excited to speak with everybody and hopefully give some really good tips on some of the questions that have been presented. They're really good, by the way. I'm quite excited to read them. A lot of overlap.
Yes, and we're gonna get that to that. So just for anyone listening who doesn't know what we're talking about, within the Running for Real Superstars community, which about 10 days ago you would have heard, got to know some of the members of the community with that Superstars episode. So hopefully everyone listening knows what Superstars is. It's a Facebook community, but in there I posted that I was going to bring Evie on this show to answer your questions, because I know it's all very well me bringing Evie on or bringing a sports psychologist on and asking them things. And I feel like I do a pretty good job of getting the questions that you might be wondering, but I'm not putting it maybe in your words or maybe a specific thing that you might be wondering, and others too. So I put it in there to give us some questions, and you gave us plenty of questions, all really good ones, many of them very similar, as Evie mentioned. So we're going to go over some of those. And the first question, we're going to dive right in here. The first question was very much one that I feel is very relevant right now, but it also is going to set the tone for this whole thing as something people need to keep in mind. So the first question was from David, who said, how do you balance just having fun and racing hard, which involves some or a lot of suffering? Inevitably in a race where you are giving it your best, there are moments when it becomes increasingly difficult to use a masochistic approach or simply enjoy the pain. As we learned from Alex Hutchinson, smiling only works temporarily. Now, I love this question because this is kind of where I'm in right now. But what are your thoughts on his question there?
Well, the first thing was when I read the final comment, I did smile, and it made me think of when you see cameras. This isn't directly relevant to the question, but when you're in a race and you see cameras, I've learned to always smile when I see a camera because the running shots aren't always flattering. So I definitely advise to run at least when you see a camera, if not the whole way when you're running. But yeah, really good question, David. And Tina, the caveat with all of these questions for me is I can offer some general advice without really getting to know each runner, each person that asks the question. It's going to be slightly generic because the way I work, I need to get to know you as a person, and you know that because of the way we work together.
Absolutely.
You're Tina, the person, and you run. You're not Tina, the runner, if that makes sense. So,
yeah.
General comments about this question. I think the first thing to do is ask the question to David, can you have fun and race hard at the same time? Is that something that you have to separate? What do you think of that? When you're racing hard, so like you did in Boston, I'm sure you raced as hard
Disney,
as you
mean. Boston.
Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say we're not recording this in May.
You
it's March, not May.
Yeah. I'll give you a little bit of info about me later, which might explain some of my brain fog. So yeah, when you were running at Disney, and I'm sure there were times in that race when you felt it was tough.
I would say that race, most of it, yeah.
Yeah, to where relative to where you are now. Remember, where you are now is all you can go by. Were you enjoying it despite racing hard?
Disney is a difficult one for me. I would say overall in my training right now, it's about having fun. Do I enjoy parts where I'm running hard? Yes, to an extent. Disney, again, I feel like that's the exemption to the rule, because even though that was the one I wanted to have the most fun in, I just was struggling so much that the only moments I had fun were the blinding, this is, I'm running down Main Street, or there's Epcot, or the very over the top moments, and being in Magic Kingdom, because I just felt so terrible that it was hard for me to have fun. And I was trying, I was doing all I could to force myself. And I don't know if you and I have talked about this. I know I have other places, but I wanted to shake. I felt like I was shaking myself, what are you doing? Have fun, you stupid girl. I was getting annoyed at myself for not being able to have fun. You're in Disney World, for God's sake. But I just felt so dead. But that being said, to answer your question, yes, but I do get what David's saying in that there gets a point where you kind of abandon ship. But then I feel like when you get to that point, you're that far into the race, into the run, that you're just focusing on finishing it. And so you kind of don't need to be having fun because you're not even really aware of having fun or not. You're just like, just make it, just survive, just get to that tree, or whatever it may be. Like you're thinking so in the now that you don't even really have time to say, am I having fun? Does that make sense? That's kind of how I feel.
That makes sense to me. And it's not an easy question because for everybody, depending on your routine and what's going on in your life and also where you live, it determines how you can actually form that balance between fun and hard racing. Mm-hmm. And I don't say to David, can you not have fun by training and going for a trail run without your watch? And there are some practical things you can do. So go out with the kids or go for a slow, steady run in a place that you haven't been in before and make the goal to enjoy the scenery. Make it about having fun. Racing, I think if you enter a race, you want to do it. So it's something you like to do, running. Are you having fun? Maybe not. Is that okay not to have fun in a race? That's okay.
I mean, I think maybe the first few miles or the first third, you definitely should be out there having fun. Do you not think?
Yeah, I think enjoying the moment, there are so many different elements of having fun. You can go and do a race wearing a costume. I remember doing a heroes and villains race and I dressed up as evil Spider-Woman and just being in character was so much fun. But I remember it was quite extraordinary. I was racing really hard, but I felt like I was a fun character, but then it changed and I wasn't having fun because I was racing hard. So again, that's the balance there is, okay, I've entered a race for fun, essentially. I chose to race hard. That's okay. I didn't have fun the whole way. That's okay as well. As long as at the end of that race, I can say to myself, well, I'm pleased with what I did. I entered it feeling like I wanted to do it. Did I have fun the whole way around? No. Did I work hard the whole way around? Yes. Is that okay? Yes. The balance is so personal. Mm-hmm. But I would definitely advise to, if you're somebody who is your goals are based around time, try and steer away from that. And I know you said this as well. And also ask yourself the question, what is it about chasing a time that really matters to you?
Mm-hmm. Then maybe this is a good time to step on, because I do know personally that David is actually not one of those people that is obsessed with time. He's very good at running. No watch me. He doesn't look. He is very much in the moment, in the present. And I think, David, maybe my words kind of spoke to you in that, abandoned ship kind of point where you are having fun early on, but then you get to a certain point and just say, okay, this isn't going to be fun anymore. But like Evie said, as long as you kind of can look back and say, yes, I did enjoy parts of it. I did enjoy the first half or whatever it may be. So, but you mentioned about time. Now, this was a kind of a running theme throughout the group, throughout the questions we had. Now, the first one I wanted to go for kind of tied in quite a lot of people's questions. And Camilla and Robin, this kind of incorporates your question as well. Michael wanted to know, what tools or techniques can someone use to identify if a feeling or emotion is a false positive? Meaning, if I'm telling myself to stop running because of discomfort or energy levels being low, how do I identify that observation is valid? Now, again, Camilla and Robin also talked about that again with, if you're running by feel, how do you know when to slow down, whether to keep going, what to push through? So what would you say to them?
I would say it's something that you need to practice in training. So if you're asking yourself the question in a race, it indicates to me that you haven't trained your brain perhaps in training, and it's potentially something that you could look at doing. And by that I mean start thinking in training about how you feel when you run. So start before you go for a training run, and it could be a tough session. Because when you have yourself and you've got a tough session coming up, there's lots of demons in your head, and motivated to do it. Sometimes you have to think about how you're going to feel after the session, because you know it's going to involve a level of discomfort. And often the level of discomfort that you perceive before you do it is insurmountable. That's what's stopping you from wanting to do it. So in training, start to think about, with any session, what you want to get out of it, and be specific. So I want to warm up properly. That could be a goal for a training session. I want to get my body feeling really loose and warm and supple. I want to say hi and embrace all the other training partners that I've got that are there. I want to recognize that, and these are just things that I'm thinking of my head. A really good one is relatedness. So I would say to myself, I'm going to realize that everybody's feeling nervous about this training run. We all don't like to feel pain, yet we're all going to be able to go for it and embrace it and push through it if we have to. So I'm going to acknowledge that everybody there feels the way I do, because that gives you a level of comfort. And then another goal could be, I'm going to be a little bit more reserved on this session. I'm not going to go all out. So if my normal tempo run is 7-minute miles, I'm going to actually not worry about that. I'm just going to go by effort and try and do, 65, 70% effort and feel comfortable. I'm going to go at a comfortable pace, and I'm going to be happy with that. So set some specific goals around your training sessions and start to think about it so that you can start to get used to managing your thoughts in training. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think they're probably wondering a bit more like, okay, so, even in training, let's say you are doing a 20-minute tempo and you're at 12 minutes and, your body is saying, I can't do this, I can't finish, this is too hard, this is too hard. How do they know whether it's just their body kind of trying to protect itself when really they can keep going, or whether their body is giving them the warning, like, hey, you aren't going to make this, like, you better slow down? Like, how to know, especially if someone is going by effort, it's very difficult to know whether you're going out too fast, and whether when you have that kind of early panic that says, I can't sustain this, whether it's actually true that you can't sustain it, or whether it's just kind of you being scared, essentially, of pushing yourself. I think this is quite a common thing. I've heard of a lot of people saying this. They feel like, they're not tough enough to keep going, or things like that. So is there any more you could add to that?
It's all fear. It's fear-based, isn't it? It's false evidence appearing real. So where's the evidence of what they're thinking or feeling? If you are running a certain pace in a race, I'm assuming that either you and your coach, or just you, have progressed to that pace or that effort through your training. And so despite the doubts in your mind and the thoughts saying, oh, I don't think I can do this, I need to slow down, if you've done the training and you've raced progressively at the pace that you planned up to that point, and you're now executing this race as you planned, then the evidence is there that you can do it. So I would, in those moments where that doubt comes in, the first thing I would do is breathe, is focus on my breathing, because often what happens, a lot of runners will, I know breathing is unconscious, but a lot of runners stop doing it or do it in a shallow way, and that can then have a physiological effect. So their body actually could be hurting, and they might need to very slightly slow down, get their breathing right again, feel themselves calming down, and almost focus on the breathing so that you stop those doubts in your mind. But also I would say, if you're getting those thoughts, well, for example, like you just said, I don't think I could do this, I need to stop. Switch to evidence. I've done the training. I've done this in training. This is what I've progressed to. This is where I'm supposed to be. I've done the homework. Okay. So reassure yourself and do a quick body sense check. So physically, food, water, effort, and think about climate. So do you actually need to take on some fuel? Are you actually having an energy dip? Is your body telling you it's really hurting? And I think as a runner, if you need energy in a race, as opposed to the thoughts that are saying, oh, I don't do this. I think if you're experienced enough, you know, and also you make a note of it. You know, when did you last have some energy? If it's an hour ago in a marathon and you're running quite fast, you probably need to have a little bit more. So it could be physiological. So I would say do a body and mind check and reassure yourself, go back to the evidence. Where's the evidence that proves I can do this? Well, I've done the training, I've done the work, I've done this pace, I've done my sessions, I've designed my sessions around this run so that I can run this pace.
Yeah.
But in the moment, that's not easy, is it? When you're running and you're exhausted. The other thing, Tina, is slow down slightly.
Yeah.
You know, to give yourself time to build that confidence back up to then keep going faster.
And I think that's a very good point, being that you might feel like you're gonna, lose so much time if you slow down, but sometimes, like, I've called them mental freakouts or physical freakouts. Sometimes you just need a minute or two just to kind of regain composure, and then you can kind of pick it up way faster afterwards. A few things I want to add, just that you mentioned about, a body scan. One thing I remember when I was actually a kid being told about was, like, let's say you're struggling with your breathing. You can say, okay, my breathing is labored, I don't feel good breathing, but actually my legs feel okay. Or like maybe it's, my quads are feeling quite tired, but I can just use my calves a bit more to push off the ground more, but my breathing is pretty relaxed. So focus on something that does feel okay, or my arms are pumping well, or something, like, rather than focusing on the negative. And then the only other thing I'd mention, in that moment where you are maybe even in training or in a race, like that discomfort, you think, I can't make it to the finish line. I can't make it to, the 20 minutes in that tempo. You might say, okay, well, I'll just make it to that tree. Can I make it to that tree? Yeah, I can make it to that tree. And then you get to that tree and you say, okay, there's a bench up there. I'm just going to get to the bench. Once I get to the bench, then I'll kind of see how I feel, and kind of make it shorter goals rather than just looking so far ahead of how far you have left. So those are just a few more things.
And in a marathon, I mean, you've got, people may think, I don't have time. You've got time. It's not a 60-meter dash. You've got time to recompose yourself and actually switch from an internal focus to an external focus. So the internal focus tips are, body and sense check, mind check on your breathing. And I like that, because if you focus on your breathing, you realize your breathing is fine, or you can pick that back up. And then you think, okay, how are my legs doing? How are my feet? How's my form? how are my shoulders? How's my head? Is my face tense? Because you can, the tenseness builds up, doesn't it? And it's when you think about that and isolate a body part, like you've suggested, you can almost feel the release when you think about it and let go. And the breathing helps with that as well. And that can then be all the shift you need, plus slowly, a tiny bit of slowing down to then pick up again and go for it.
Okay.
The other thing is externally focused. So look at the crowd, focus on the drawing in runners in front of you. And in a marathon, that's pretty achievable because there are so many people. You're not generally out on your own. It's not nice when you are. But I think hopefully that's helped Dave and answer David's question.
That's Michael's question, but
Sorry.
David's was first. Okay, so next one is switching gears a little bit. Liz wanted to know, how do you differentiate an overly obsessional drive to run from a healthy self-disciplined drive? I love this question because I think this is so relevant to runners, because we do, I've often thought about, like, running. A lot of the time when I do it, do I actually feel like, I really want to go out to do a run? No, maybe not. It's kind of like, well, I've committed myself to do this. I said I was going to run 5 days a week, so I'm going to run 5 days, whatever it may be. So what are your thoughts on that? Just because I thought that was something very different and interesting.
Yeah, it's a hard one. And again, it's different for everybody. I think if you're a runner and you're asking that question, you're obviously aware that you've got a good level of drive to run. And sometimes this often comes up if you're injured or you can't run, because you suddenly realize what you've what you're not when you're not running.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the way to manage your healthy addiction to running is to sit down and really think about your motivation. So what's driving you to run?
Mm-hmm.
And what is your greater purpose for your running, for your sport? And often there are so many instant goals. I want to lose weight. I want to, support a charity. I want to get fit. I want to have a little bit of structure in my life. And this is the joy of running. People start to do it. They find the discipline to do it and the motivation. And then it becomes what they're missing if they don't do it. This fear builds up around the running.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big sign. If you start to fear your running, as in, if I don't run, this will happen, or it'll be a catastrophe, or you start to feel a little bit of uneasiness around not.
Do you mean like, let's say some little niggle comes up and you need to take 3 days off and you're like panicking about it?
Yeah, you're panicking about it. For me, that indicates, I don't want to label it with addiction. I just think for me that indicates a tipping point where the balance is a little bit unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would ask that person, well, why are you feeling bad about not running if you're nurturing your body and letting it recover?
Mm-hmm.
So what's negative about that, So actually, I think the first thing is self-awareness, just to be really self-aware. And again, if you've got a niggle and you need your body to recover, try and watch your language. I'm not going to take 2 days off. I'm going to have 2 days recovery. It can make a difference to the shift in your focus and your attitude towards yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because I spoke to a couple of elite runners a couple of weeks ago, actually, and they're top level, and it does. And this is for any level. This is relevant for any level, and actually almost more relevant for our level
mm-hmm.
of recreational competitive. When the biggest thing that sets people who enjoy their running and succeed in their running or in their sport is their approach to their body and how they manage their body. And the most important day of the week, or the most important day of the training cycle, is recovery. That's the key training day.
Yes.
And I was, wow, really? What? So you don't do any running? No, but I'm recuperating. My muscles
mm-hmm.
are, and I could see that they had learned to speak that way. But days off what? Days off running. Sure, you can say days off running, but if it's what it actually means to you that is important. So if when you say to yourself, I'm having a day off running, that spikes anxiety, think about that and think about why. Well, actually, I'm having a day on. It's just a day of rest and recovery, which my body needs in order to be able to run for the 5 days a week that it runs.
Yeah. Well, okay, so another alternative to that, Liz, or anyone else who this applies to, let's say you have to miss a day because you have a really busy day planned with family. Maybe you have, a breakfast or some kind of event or something that you have to be up and ready for at 7 a.m. And
there's a storm. You can't go out.
Yeah.
There's a storm.
Yeah, exactly. So something comes up, but instead of kind of seeing it as, oh God, what am I going to do? Like, you're creating, well, within that example I used, you're creating incredible memories that with people that mean a lot to you, or you're doing something that's important for someone. Let's say a grandparent says, look, I really need someone to take me to my doctor's appointment. You're helping someone who is very important to you. So yes, it is a little bit stressful that you missed your run, but remind yourself of what you're gaining from this instead of what's being taken away from you. And you said a storm, see that as some bad weather. See that as, okay, this is kind of a fun time to like stay in the house, snuggle in and force myself to watch some Netflix and kind of binge on it. Let's just have like a couch day. It's kind of, rather than seeing what is stolen from you or taken from you.
What can I do is what you need to ask. What can
do you
I
get? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What can I do? And it ties into the other question about balance.
Mm.
I don't want to, what's the word I'm looking for? Not lecture, but tell people. It's easy to say to someone, have more in your life than running. I don't want, that's not my style. However, I would suggest to get that balance in your life, create like a library around your running. It's not just about racing and times. It's about going down and running on the beach barefoot, if your feet are okay to do that, to enjoy the scenery and get some water and just enjoy that environment with your family, or go and do a trail run.
Or a hike. If you can't run, go for a walk with the family, yeah.
Yeah, and other sports. Try other things and incorporate that into your running library, so that you have got other aspects of that to build up to enjoy if you can't go out for your run. And also own it. Be frustrated that you can't go out for your run. That's okay. It's the anxiety, when the anxiety and the fear builds up around it, and the self, you start being down on yourself because you're not going out for your run. That's, I think, where the unhealthy tipping point steps in. And again, build that self-awareness and be a bit kinder to yourself, and actually congratulate yourself for, okay, being adaptable. What can I do? I can't run today. What can I do? Foam rolling, strength training.
Yes.
You've got that opportunity.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you, Evie. That is helpful. All right, as we are about halfway through, I want to take a few minutes to let everyone kind of hear a bit of an update on you. We'll take a bit of a break to decompress for a minute. So firstly, tell us, how are things going? You did have you can share with the community about a lifetime goal that you had, traveling to Australia for recently, even though everyone knows or should know that you are from Australia. Hopefully the accent has told you by now, but you went there for something really special. So I would love for you to share a little bit about that first.
Oh, that's so kind. And this is, again, links back to the questions of having fun and racing hard. So I went back to the Gold Coast on the east coast of Australia to compete in the World Championship Triathlon age group championships. So that means that it's similar to, I don't know if it's similar to the Masters runners, but you compete with people in your age group, and you have to qualify the year before. There's 4 or 5 races you can do, triathlons you can do to qualify. And if you get the qualification, you then, if you get a podium place, first, second or third in a qualifying race, you get an automatic qualification into the World Championship. And if you don't do that, you can go on what's called a roll down list, and you get the opportunity to potentially go at the end of the qualifiers. So I was lucky enough to qualify, and I went, and I couldn't resist because it's my hometown. Hometown.
How perfect.
Racing. Oh, it was fun. And do you know what I loved about it? Because, Tina, for me, triathlon is about having fun, and I'm competitive, yet actually having got to that point of qualifying was the win. And I just felt, it's a world championship. You've got, 50 other countries competing. You can't control who's in it. You don't know who's in it. I'm going to go do my best and have fun. And the thing that drove it for me was having my family there. Like because I live in England, I don't have family here to watch my races, or you know what it's like when you have people you love at your races. It can be great. And obviously I've got my training buddies and friends that are really supportive here, yet having family just to be there and cheer as I went past on the bike was just fantastic. And I know the area that we raced quite well because I lived on the Gold Coast, and it was just the perfect day. I had a good start time. It was early in the morning. You can draw a bad start, a late start time, and it could be 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and you've got the whole morning to hang around, and then the weather gets hot. The weather was the only concern, but it was September, so it wasn't too hot. It was quite nice. Yeah, raced really well. The swim was just a straight mile down this channel. Normally you have to go around buoys and do a lot of turning, and that can mean lots of pummeling and punching and getting squished. But that was good, and the bike was very windy. Oh, really? Yeah, it was really tough. And the run was tough. And I remember that, am I having fun now? Or is this really hurting? Am I racing hard? And I remember having that thought in my head, and I slowed down slightly, breathed, reassured myself that, look, I'm here to just enjoy it. I get whatever time I get. It's not about that. And I also knew my family were up around the corner. It gave me a bit of, I thought, well, I'll take it easy until I get to them, then I'll push, I'll go. And I knew the last 10 minutes, I thought I can manage the pain for 10 minutes, I'll push. And I had a great time. It was, I came, I think, 13th.
That's great, yeah.
My age group, that was good. Yeah, it was all those fast Aussies and New Zealanders.
And how did your family feel about you representing GB instead of Australia? Was there any part of them that was like, traitor?
Right, because you're right. I did wear the GB suit. No, they were really supportive actually. And again, they didn't see this. They just saw me. They saw me, and my dad was there, my mum was there,
so cool.
brother, my nephew, my sister-in-law. It was just the best day, and my husband was there, of course.
That's so special.
Lots of friends from here. We all travelled together, so that's fun.
That really is good. I don't think British people would have been quite. I think if I ran in an American outfit, if I ran from America, I think my British friends and family would be like, "You are disowned. Get out." Like, I honestly don't think people would handle it. I mean, they would, but really, I think I would get a lot of flack for it. I really do. Yeah. I think British people would not handle that very well. But anyway, I'm so glad to hear that was such a good experience. And then the other thing I want you to update, I don't want to say it, you say it. Tell us your news.
Well, this is another lifelong goal for me. Well, I'm so excited to say that I'm pregnant and I'm having a baby. I'm actually having 2 babies. This is a big moment for me. I haven't gone public with this.
I know. I wasn't sure whether to bring it up because I actually even when I looked in your Facebook and you hadn't put anything on there, and all photos of you were of your head, and so I was like, I don't know if she's saying anything. So you're getting to hear it first here, guys.
Yeah, guys, hot off the press. So no, I'm 20 weeks pregnant, and
you will be 23 by the time this comes out.
Oh, wow. 23. Yeah, 23 weeks. Yeah, and big. Yeah, I've definitely got a nice little bump.
Yeah.
And it's been, do you know what? And we'll have to maybe talk about this another time, but, managing when you exercise a lot and you do sport, running or triathlon, and then, you've gone from full activity and control over your routine to the opposite. Let's just say I'm pleased I'm a sports psychologist because it's given me lots of skills to self-manage.
I hope you've been taking notes along the way of thoughts that you have and the way that you kind of see things. Yeah.
Yeah, my dear supervisor suggested I document it actually. So I've been voice recording because I was really, really, really sick the first 2 months. And that. There's sick and then there's can't get up off the bed for 4 days sick.
I know you had it really rough and I'm so sorry, but I'm glad that you are slowly coming out of this and getting yourself into the good stage in the middle. But congratulations once again, and I'm sure everyone else is going to congratulate you as well. And I cannot wait. I don't know if my listeners know, but I'm going back to England in June. One of the reasons I chose June was I have quite a few friends who are pregnant, Evie being one of them. And as she's having twins, I'm hoping that I might get to meet them because they may come a little bit early. So we shall see.
Did you?
You said they were due end of July, didn't you? But you said they'd probably be.
Beginning of, the 37 weeks will be beginning of July. And so let's, end of June, beginning of July.
But we will see. So congratulations again. And that's such exciting news. And yes, I definitely actually think we may have to do a part 2 of this episode because we did have so many questions. And I think that is something worth talking about. If you are a listener and you do think this is something interesting and something that you would like to hear about, send me and Evie a message, either tag us in something on your social media or just send a message on Superstars because I would love to hear if that is something we should cover in another episode we do about this. Okay, so going back into this, Erica has a question, which is... most runners have major nerves on race day, but what are we actually nervous about and how do we cope with these nerves? Now, I know we've covered this before, and Erica and anyone else listening, I want to tell you once again to go back and listen to the previous episode with Evie. There's an episode with Kim Dawson and an episode with Nicole Detling, all of those, and Brett McCabe. I've got 4 of those. They all cover this topic. This is one that I've gone over quite a bit, but I do want you to talk about it, Evie, because, you know, you would have had to deal with nerves recently with that championship, and just in general. I love that she actually said, what are we actually nervous about? Because we haven't asked it in that way before.
No, it's really, really good. It's a very relevant question. And I really like this topic because there's lots of different ways we can deal with it. And I'm going to talk briefly about challenge and threat states. So when we're nervous, and this is a topic in sports psychology that's well researched and well evidenced, because we can set up tests quite easily in labs and test physiological reactions to nerves as well as mental reactions. So what is different about someone who turns up at the start of a race feeling nervous and can perform well, and someone who turns up and feels nervous and they can't? This is the difference between challenge and threat. You're either in what we call a challenge state, so feeling powerful, ready, nervous but ready, or you're feeling threatened, so powerless, anxious, and the nerves are actually detrimental to your performance. So what are you nervous about? Again, that's personal, and that's something that you can ask yourself. And a question to ask yourself, what am I fearing here? What is it? Is it my time that I'm wanting to get? Is it worrying about the pain? Is it, break it down? That's the first thing I would say.
Is it other people feeling disappointed in you, letting other people down? I think that's quite a common one.
Yeah, really good one. And, you know, the people around you love you regardless of, you know, how you end up in a race, where you end up. But a couple of tips to get yourself into a challenge state would be to focus on the resources you've got in your toolkit to meet the demands of what's ahead of the task of the race. And we know with challenge and threat, physiologically, what's happening when you're in a challenge state, you've got your heart rate's increased, but you've got blood flowing and oxygen flowing through your body quite efficiently, and the blood is flowing from your body to your brain quite efficiently. So you're able to perceive the task ahead, the race ahead, realistically and not fear it. And when you're in a challenge, when you're in a threatened state, so the opposite, what's happening is heart rate increases, but also your, what is it called? Peripheral vascular system. So your blood cells constrict and tighten. So the oxygen in the blood doesn't pump around your body as efficiently as it could. And what that does, it's not pumping to your brain as efficiently as it could. And that creates fog, and it creates a perception of the task ahead to be greater than the resources you've got to meet them.
Okay.
So that's where you start to feel scared of this event ahead, this race ahead, because, oh gosh, I don't think I can do this, because you're focusing on the task, not the resources that you've got.
Okay. So what are some examples of resources? Like, you've done your training.
Well, confidence. So you focus on on your self-confidence, boosting that. You focus on your the types of goals that you have. So rather than saying, I don't want to run slowly in this race, your goals need to be a little bit more positive. I want to do my best. I want to run to my best effort. I want to manage my hydration and nutrition well. So more success-based rather than fear-based goals.
Like, I want to get to mile, 8 of the half marathon feeling good. Or I want to make it.
I want to manage my pace and really, be reserved for the first 5 miles and run within myself comfortably and not get swept up in the crowd. And so that's one of the things, those achievement goals. The self-confidence comes from, again, where does your source of confidence come from? Look at the training you've done. Acknowledge that, acknowledge the evidence, and praise yourself, the effort you've put in. So it's nurturing that confidence. And you've got to that race uninjured. You've done really well. And again, rather than focus on, but I missed out a week of training and, that, and worrying about that, think about the training you've done and what you have achieved. And so building your self-confidence. And the next thing is controllables. What can I control in this race right now? I can control my breathing. I can control where I stand. I can control what I wear. If you need sunnies, if it's hot, make sure you've got the right kit on. I can't control other competitors, and I can't control the distance that's already set. I can control my pace, and I can control, my mental state.
Mm-hmm.
Do that. So those are your resources. So the athletes that present at the front of the start line feeling challenged and nervous and ready, they're focusing on their resources. And those that feel anxious and actually start to feel like their performance is actually going to be impeded. So their heart rate's racing, they're sweating, they're anxious, they're focusing on the demands ahead, and they're feeling like their ability to cope is definitely outweighed by the demands of the task rather than their resources.
Okay. And then just diving into that just a little bit deeper, both Erica and Christine kind of mentioned about, Erica said, my biggest fear is probably running out of energy. And Christine said, there's no way I'll be able to sustain that for the entire race. Now, I'm thinking, just putting myself in their shoes, let's say you are training for a marathon and you've managed to do, I don't know, up to a 10-mile tempo at your race pace. Or you've managed to do, if you're doing half marathon, maybe you've managed to do 8 miles at your race pace. But you're thinking, and it's that whole thing of like I remember specifically this exact thing, like, how the hell am I going to make it 26 miles at that speed when I can't even make it halfway in training? So that's their biggest worry. Yeah, we definitely talked about that. So just diving a little bit deeper into that one, what do you tell yourself when people are kind of freaking out that how am I ever going to manage this? Again,
I go back to boosting my self-confidence, and I would say to myself, okay, I've been following a training plan that's designed for me to run this pace, and I'm not supposed to run this pace in training because then I'd be overtraining. Mm-hmm. Now I'm supposed to, all the training I've done, which I've done well and succeeded in, has got me to the point of running this pace for this race. So I'd focus on the evidence, Tina, and the training I've done, and reassure myself that I'm choosing to do this. I know I can do this. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. A training program's a big jigsaw puzzle, and you put it all together, and it's almost like the outcome happens because you've put this jigsaw puzzle together. You can't know whether you're going to be able to sustain the pace. But what do you know? Well, you know that you've done the training. You know that you've managed your nutrition and hydration. You know that you've done some positive mental training for yourself. You're focusing on your confidence. So looking at the things that you've done and praising yourself for the efforts that you've put in, praising yourself for all the mornings that you choose to get up and run. Yeah, it's not easy. Mm-hmm. Even though we love it, it's not. It takes discipline and commitment. Who's in your corner? All the people that support you, they're not judging you. Mm-hmm. This race. They love you. They're there to help you fulfill a goal that you deserve to have and to own. So think about your social network, people around you who can support you.
No, I think that's good. Just one other thing I want to add, Erica, as you specifically mentioned, a race would be much more enjoyable if I could talk myself out of the panic. I just want to remind you and others that no matter how hard you train, no matter how fit you get, no matter what level you reach, a race is always going to be hard, and a race or a hard workout is always going to be, like we talked about earlier with David's question, you're always going to override the fun part at a certain point. And I've seen so many people get themselves into trouble when they go into a race thinking this is going to be fun. Myself, I told you at the beginning of this episode, I am a good example. I said this is going to be fun, and it wasn't, because I kind of forgot the fact that it is hard. So Erica, you wouldn't even want it to be enjoyable the whole time, because it's never going to be. It's always going to be hard. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that there, because I think that's a common misconception that if you get to a certain fitness or a certain confidence level, it's just going to be fun the whole way and you're just going to feel great. You're never going to feel that way. So just kind of a reminder there.
And also, one thing to quickly add, Erica, it's normal to have nerves, and it's normal to be anxious about what the pain you're about to endure or the discomfort you're about to endure. And it's normal to push your comfort zones, and you can do it. And that's why you're doing it. It's every runner goes through that, as you said. Everyone experiences that.
Yeah.
So it's a case of managing it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Evie. All right. So I think we will break this up into two because there's quite a few more questions that I want to get to. So we will do another episode of this, but I want to end on one more, which is kind of about you, which is Mike's question of what is something important in sports psychology that you used to believe that you have changed your mind about?
Yeah, I love this question. I really do. Thank you for the question. And first of all, I went into sports psychology with an open mind, and I've learned lots of skills and therapies and techniques and strategies as I've gone through my training and through the work that I do. I think one thing that I used to believe was I had an assumption that mental skills, so things like visualization, positive thinking, focusing on controllables, coming up with strategies for everyone, it would suit everybody. They work for everybody, but not everything works for everybody. Everyone's so individual, and that's what I love about my work. So when I work with an athlete, now I'm not quick to, I don't think about what skills I can give an athlete. For me, it's actually helping an athlete develop the skills themselves. And that thoughts that you have, for me, this is something I have changed my view on as I've progressed. I try not to judge thoughts as positive or negative. I try and judge them now as thoughts, and they're just thoughts. So I try and change the way I relate to them or the impact they have on me rather than judging them as positive or negative.
Okay.
And I used to believe that, you've got thoughts that are negative and you can change them. I'm not sure that you can, and that's part of my philosophy. My approach is much more work with whatever thoughts you've got going on and manage them and try and change the way you relate to them. So try and change the impact they have on you if they're not helpful.
So for someone listening who's thinking, I'm never going to make it, or I have to stop, how's that going to hurt? Like,
can you change that? Can you change that really in your head right there and tell yourself, you can try and say to yourself, think positive, change it. In my experience, that doesn't, particularly in pressure situations where you're racing, that's not effective. It doesn't work. You can't suddenly change your mind, your thoughts, but you can change the impact they have on you. So, and it's I probably have to have another session with you to talk about it. It's understanding that you aren't having a thought of, I'm not anxious. You're having a thought of anxiety. They're quite different, because I think that's and it's not just for running. It sort of serves you for every part of your life. I think that if you can change the impact of the thoughts rather than and actually not be a thought, like I'm not anxious, I'm not full of doubt. You're having doubt. You're having thoughts of doubt. You're having feelings of doubt, but you're not doubt. You're not feeling. You're not. It's not consuming you. So it's a subtle shift that you can develop, and that's something I've developed through my career. I think because at first I did think, you can change your thoughts to negative, from negative to positive, but for me, and maybe it's just the way I explain it, I think it's more realistic for me and effective to not judge them, because everyone has negative and positive thoughts, millions of them going on through their head all the time. But you can definitely change the way you relate to those thoughts and the impact they have on you if they're not helpful.
Okay.
So it's changed.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. No, I think that was really interesting and very true. And you mentioned about like different skills. I've noticed that they even change over time. Like you might find something really helpful at one point in your life, and then that thing just doesn't seem to be helping at all. But then something you read about and thought, that's not really for me. Doesn't really work. Like for me right now, mantras aren't really doing anything. But there used to be something that I used a lot. But right now, I don't really have a specific word in any kind of capacity that comes to mind. So
I wonder why you're in a different phase of your life.
Yeah,
Your
I think,
life has got different focus. You've got beautiful little Bailey running around and, giving you lots of mantras like, feed me, mummy.
Yeah. Well, actually, on that note, Evie, just to wrap up here, this is a selfish one, but I'm sure other people will be interested. I've had the question since having Bailey a lot about having this mum strength, being able to dig down deeper because of having a daughter, because I've been through childbirth, all that kind of stuff. But I've said that for me personally, I feel like it actually, when I think of her, I kind of almost lose momentum because I'm like, well, what's the point? Like, I hear some people say that it gives them an extra level of motivation to dig down deeper. But I actually find the opposite, that I'm kind of like, if I think about her, so I try not to think about her when I'm running hard. If I think about her, I think, well, why am I doing this? Like, she's what really matters.
Wow, that's interesting.
So you would say that is kind of counterintuitive?
Yeah, I guess, but, that's the way you are, Tina. And for you, you remember when you stopped, where you were at with your life in your running cycle with your professional running, when you decided to have a baby. You were at, I suppose, was it the peak of your running career, or you were in a really good place with your running before you started to then focus on wanting to have Bailey? Were you at a fairly high level?
Yeah, I'd say I was pretty close. I mean, physically, I think I was. I think mentally, after the running for Great Britain, it all kind of started going downhill from there.
Yeah. Well, so it started getting challenging to focus on your running, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But had a different focus. Well, I think maybe you're still in that phase of enjoying motherhood, and yet you still got that part of you that is a serious professional runner. You're striving really hard to be a happy runner and enjoy it, which you are. And also, this is your first child, and, I'm not saying, that it is what that is, but I think she's only, a year old? Yeah. And I think accepting that for you, she brings out a different motivation, and then that's okay. That's okay. And, you got to accept it.
Yeah. And I'm okay with it. I get asked it a lot. And so that's why I was curious, but I don't want to turn this into about me. Maybe you and I can talk about it in further detail, but I was just curious your thoughts on it there. And you've given us a little bit. I'll let us continue this conversation offline so our audience can hear your Running for Real 4 questions. So we're just going to take a moment to thank Aftershocks and Knesio, and we will be right to the final 4. I was excited to introduce you to Aftershocks in that mind-blowing episode with Ray McClanahan a few weeks ago, and I'm really thankful to Aftershocks for sponsoring this episode. I've heard from many of you just how much you loved your Aftershocks, and now I can definitely see what all the fuss is about. In fact, I've been wearing them for all my long runs in training for the Boston Marathon. They're so comfortable that I don't feel the need to rip them off and rub my ears as they hurt as soon as I click stop on my watch. You barely notice they're there, really. I also love that you hear your music or your Running for a podcast, or I suppose any other podcast you listen to, through the bone conduction technology. I wasn't sure I'd be a fan of that, to be honest. Vibrating through my cheekbones, that sounded like a recipe for me feeling dizzy, but I was wrong. Not only did I feel no dizziness whatsoever, but I absolutely love the fact that I can hear my music or podcast while also hearing sounds of the environment around me. I feel safer and feel like crossing the road isn't risking my life every time. And I can hear the sounds of nature. The good parts of actually being out on a run that we can easily miss when we have in-ear headphones. As a Running for Real listener, you can get $50 off a Trex Titanium Endurance Bundle at tina.aftershocks.com. That's TINA.AFTERSHOKZ or Z, whichever you prefer, .com, and go see what all the buzz is about. Get yourself a pair. Do you ever feel like every runner should have an equal share of injuries, and once you hit that quota, you're done with them for life? No more injuries ever again? Wouldn't that be so nice? Except we all know that life doesn't work that way, and running certainly doesn't work that way. Now, I've had plenty of injuries in my years of running, but I've been fortunate enough to be able to say that my knees have not been one of my trouble areas. Although saying that, I'm probably going to jinx myself. However, I know that knee pain is one of the most, it may even be the most common running issues. And when runner's knee hits, it can be miserable for a long time as well. Two-time Ironman Mike Emmerling was fed up with dealing with it after 5 years of a constant battle. He decided to use his engineering brain to create his own solution, and he kept going until he found one that worked. New Knee is an innovative new product designed to provide immediate relief of runner's knee symptoms. Elite athletes use it, recreational runners use it, and even running injury specialist Dr. Ben Chateau prescribes it to his runners. Some superstars are testing it out as we speak, and I'll be excited to share their feedback in a few weeks. Knee pain can be debilitating, so let New Knee get you back to your running schedule and stop runner's knee in its tracks. You can go to newkneeshop.com and use promo code TinaMuir for 20% off. That's NUNEESHOP.com and use code TINAMUIR for 20% off. All right, Evie, 4 more questions for you, starting with one piece of advice you'd like to give our listeners for life.
Whoa, one piece of advice.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I may have said this one before. Actually, no, I don't think I have. This is one that's I've come to think about quite a lot fairly recently. You'll always get a lot of advice and guidance from people around you, friends, coaches, runners. This is in relation to your running. Always know that you know your body best.
I love that.
Trust your gut. You know your body best.
And that can also apply to life, right? You know yourself best.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Cool. Thank you, Evie.
Me recently, it was a good piece of advice.
Yeah, that is definitely a good piece. All right. One person you would like everyone to go follow on social media.
Wow. Oh, there are so many.
I know.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to say this is a fellow who he's got a big challenge coming up in May, and he's quite active on social media. His name's James Williams.
James Williams.
And I think it's James Runs Far. That's his.
I will put a link in the show notes so everyone can go find it. Okay, great.
Because he's not only a great guy, but he's running the length of the country in May.
Oh, cool.
And I think, and as a runner, everyone can empathise with what he's going through and share his journey of excitement.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Evie. All right, how do you want to be remembered on this podcast?
How do I want to be remembered? Someone who's genuine, authentic, and fun.
I would say you hit the nail on the head with those ones. Yep, definitely got that. And finally, a running for real moment you'd like to share?
Wow.
Or pregnancy for real, maybe?
The moment was discovering I was pregnant and deciding not to run and being okay with that through my pregnancy and actually enjoying that moment of that decision I made. I just felt this freedom and this pride in the fact that I was taking a break. You
did. You've done so well with it, and I've loved seeing it progress with you, that you've been able to do other things and just kind of being okay with going for walks and things. So well done to you. Evie, are you taking on clients right now if someone is interested in bringing on a sports psychologist into their team? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I am. I have capacity for new clients, and I wouldn't say, I'm not going to say, toot my own horn and say sports psychology is for everyone, but it's interesting that more and more people are starting to realize the benefit of thinking about mental training, and the physical is so tangible, and it's so it can be quite straightforward and measurable. But often you get to that race and it's not the physical that matters, it's what's going on in your head. So I would encourage people to try it, because I think you'll always be surprised with what you discover about yourself when you have a session with a sports psychologist. It's not always what you think it's going to be about. So I think
okay. Cool. Well, I will put lots of links in the show notes, but where can people find you if they want to follow in the future?
I'm going to start writing more on my own website. So it's evieserventi.com. I'm going to start writing lots of articles, short ones, about the very topics actually that we've talked about. So managing nerves and accepting, your thoughts, good and bad, lots of little tips around performance and aspects of managing your training.
Okay. So great. Well, Evie, thank you so much for answering these questions. As I said, we will get a part 2 to answer the other questions and probably some more, I'd imagine. But thank you so much for answering the questions and for helping superstars out. I really appreciate you and all that you do. And just, I'm so excited for this next stage of your life. So thank you for being a dear friend to me and helping everyone in the community.
Oh, no, the pleasure's all mine. And thank you so, so much for having me. And I'm so excited that we took a long time to answer the questions because now we have part 2.
Yes.
We could make this regular.
Yeah, I would love that.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to think about questions and posing really good questions because they're so relevant and hopefully the answers will be useful for everyone. So I'll see you soon.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much. I hope that was helpful. I'm so thankful for Evie and all she's helped with my running, and I'm sure these answers were able to help you with your running. Motivation on podcasts is all well and good, but doesn't really help us with the struggles we have when we're in those tough moments. There's whole conversations and just kind of the vibe of things are hard to remember, but you can take those tips and tricks into the races with you. Now, remember, Evie is taking on clients, so if you feel like a sports psychologist is something you need in your life or want to try, be sure to go visit her website, which you can find in the show notes at tinamuir.com/episode 108, or episode 108, I should say. I am actually creating a mental training course myself, which will be released in September, and a lot of those skills that Evie taught me, I will be helping to teach you. I'm working really hard at it behind the scenes, and I will be telling you more about it in the coming months. Now, next week, we have Megan and David Roche on the podcast, 2 absolutely champion runners themselves, but also coaches to many of the elite runners you probably look up to. These 2 are the ultimate real couple and just those kind of people that everyone wants as friends. We have a fantastic chat coming for you. So if you haven't already subscribed, be sure to do so through your favorite podcast player. And if we aren't already connected on social media, come find me and say hello. You can find me on Instagram at tinamuir88, on Facebook at facebook.com/realtinamuir. And you can find me on Twitter at tinamuir. So hope to see you there. Have a great week. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.